Some days I feel like I have an endless list of little household projects to do, and today's no different. Let me show you what I'm up to today. Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. When my father, who's passed away, was a young boy, in the area where he lived, he went out and collected old arrowheads that were out in the fields around where they lived. And he left to the family this little can of arrowheads. Let me show you what they look like. Ever since I was a little boy, he kept them in this old can, which I've never really paid too much attention to, but interesting. Anyway, this is all of the arrowheads. Put that in there. And you can see by looking quickly, some of them are broken, which is probably why they are where they were. I don't know what that is, but there's a lot of them that are in pretty decent shape. And I don't know what they are, but what I'm going to do today is to make some kind of a display for these. It looks like 12 by 13, 13 by 13, something like that. And I'm not sure how I'm going to lay them out yet, but this just gives me a bit of an idea. Those of you who are following me on Instagram would have seen some pictures of this, so you already know what's going on here. But I've made some kind of rough picture frames, and this is a 1/2 inch material. This is 3/4 inch material. You can see it's quite a bit thicker. I kind of like this size here, but I need to put glass to keep these behind glass. Okay, and we're all ready to go. I've installed the bit in the router table, and I'm just going to double check the height. Yeah, that's good. When we're using a router table, you're always pushing from right to left because you want to push in to the spinning, the way the bit is spinning into the material, the same as you would on a table saw. So let's get started. I've moved over to the table saw now because I want to cut the 45-degree angle cuts. Now I could use my sliding miter for that, but I've always used the table saw, and I just feel I get a more controlled cut using my table saw. What I'm going to do now, I'm using my clear engineer square, and the only time I ever align anything to the blade, I usually align to the miter slots, but the only time I ever align to the blade is when I'm doing picture frames, because it's such a short cut, and for that I can use the blade as my guideline. So I just want to make sure that that's set up, and I'm using my guide here, my piece of wood. You've seen me use this before. Now before I do anything else, the first thing I need to do is cut one side. The next thing I need to do is to cut my angles, and there's all the 4 sides of the frame. But what I need to do now is I need to be able to measure from the inside, right from the cutting surface, right to the stopper, and that wants to be exactly 15 inches. So what I've done is I've made what's called a story stick, and this is a really short story because it's only got one measurement. Often a story stick will have 3 or 4 or 10, but this only has one, and it's 15 inches, and it'll allow me to measure from the inside of the blade so that I can set that stopper. And I'll just put a clamp on that. Now that I have one side cut, I can use it and cut all of these to exactly the same length. Now, because I don't want to take off very much material when I cut these rabbets out of here, I'm taking out my 10-inch blade and I'm going to replace it with one of my ultra-thin kerf 7 1/4-inch blades. To figure out where to set my fence, I'm just going to use my 1/2-inch measuring bar. The height of the blade is not all that critical. I'm just using my 1/8 inch measuring bar, and I can raise the blade to right about there, and that should be perfect. Now I can make the second cut. So I've decided to pre-finish these pieces before I glue them together, and the reason for that is first of all, it's easier to do when it's in pieces, but more than that, when I do the glue up, in case I get glue on the outside or inside somewhere, it's easier to take off if there's already a finish on the wood, but also it won't affect glue if you leave glue on the wood by accident when you finish it. Of course, the finish doesn't penetrate the glue, so this way we can put the finish on first, and if we get a little bit of glue on after, even if we don't notice it, it's not going to show up on our finished product. I'm all ready to do the clamping now. I'm going to use 2-part epoxy for this. The reason I don't like to use yellow glue is yellow glue tends to soak into the edge grain a little bit too much, and it doesn't give quite as good a bond. So I'm going to use epoxy, then I'll use the clamping frame to clamp it all together, and it should be ready to go in about 10 minutes. It's 5-minute epoxy, so it won't take long at all. So let's have a look at our frame here. This should be good. There we go. Wow, that looks great. Well, there's a couple of things that we still have to do. I decided to go with the black. I like the white too, but somewhere you got to make a choice. The reason I went with the black is because it makes you want to focus more on the arrowheads and less on the background. I always find with white backgrounds I get distracted by the white, so that's just me. Other people have different opinions, and we're probably all right. What I need to do next, I've gone out and I've sprayed some a backing for, so we have to wait for that to dry. But the next thing I need to do is get ready for put the glass in. I don't get to use my framing tools very often, but this is a cool little nail driver or brad driver, and what happens is it's got a hole in the end, and you just drop a brad into it, and there's a little plunger, and when you put it up against a piece of wood, when you push it, the brad comes out the end, and you can push it right into the wood rather than using a hammer. The other thing I like to use is this brad driver, and you just put that on the side of a frame, and again, you can use it for, and it's fully adjustable, you can use it for driving nails in as well. A couple of cool tools. Well, and that concludes my little arrowhead picture frame. What a great way of making a family heirloom. Pretty simple to do, and it looks really attractive, especially when you get it in the right light, and the light hits all of those arrowheads. They really stand out in there. Don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, we ask you to do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and now on Instagram. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.